How's it going, people? It's Anton Jackson. So in this video I thought it would be pretty cool to look at the clothing evolution of Walter White in Season 1 of Breaking Bad. As we know, Season 4 Better Call Saul was officially announced, and I thought no better way to celebrate this than bringing it all the way back to the very beginning and look at some pretty cool themes that we see throughout the very first season of Breaking Bad. I'm really excited to do this video. Let's do this.
So when we first meet Walt in the pilot of Breaking Bad, the first thing we see him wear is a sort of gray sweater ensemble. As we know, color is a really important theme in Breaking Bad, and his clothing in this scene really couldn't be any blander. I think this was done purposely by the writers to convey to the idea that this was a sort of bland and dull individual who had more or less lost all drive and creativity in his life. He's basically just going through the motions of life, paying his bills and saving virtually no money. He's kind of how the saying goes, sadly, just sitting around and waiting to die, even before his terminal cancer diagnosis. This is a person who once worked on groundbreaking scientific breakthroughs. He worked on projects that were awarded the Nobel Prize, and he's now just an average guy who seems to have given up on his life. He has no real drive or motivation and is stuck teaching apathetic high school students rudimentary chemistry. He's not able to save any of the money he's making, and this has put him in dire straits financially. And in this scene right here, he's obviously in no position to be able to cover an unexpected life-changing medical expense. And after Walt makes the decision to cook and sell methamphetamine to provide for his family, this really seems to give him a new, renewed purpose in his life. So in this scene, when Walter's getting diagnosed with terminal cancer, he's also wearing another bland clothing ensemble. There's no real enthusiasm or excitement in the color scheme, and the clothing is really dull as his personality is at this point. Also, something that I noticed throughout the course of Season 1 is that Walt always seems to wear a sweater at the lowest points in his life. If you remember in the last photo, when he's not getting any respect from the students in his class, and in this scene as well, where he's being diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, he's wearing a sweater. And it seems as though the sweater is meant to show a total lack of control in Walt's life in this season, where he is powerless to change his dire circumstances. Again, during the scene where Walt is quitting his job at the car wash here, he's also wearing a sweater, showing that before he quits his job, he's really not in control at his life. He's working a second job just to make ends meet, and he's going to take his own life into his own hands after the scene. And it's a pretty cool to see the clothing development after Walter decides to make this large change in his life. After the scene where Walt decides to quit his job, we really start to see some color in Walter's life. We can see a subtle shade of yellow in this scene where Walt decides to go on a ride along with Hank. And yellow as a color has many symbolic meanings in Breaking Bad in Season 1. Primarily, this color is associated with caution and fear, and most importantly, pseudo-toughness. Walt, in the first season of Breaking Bad, as he starts to set forward and go about his meth venture, wears a lot of yellow shirts. And I definitely think the theme of yellow is meant to symbolize that while Walt is very enthusiastic about the potential to make a great deal of money selling meth, he's also not fully aware at this point in his life of the full scale of the potential dangerous ramifications of getting involved in the sale of methamphetamine. So in the last couple of scenes in the pilot episode of Breaking Bad, we see Walt wear a couple of green shirts. And we'll be seeing a lot of green along with yellow in the first season of Breaking Bad. Green as a color is universally associated with greed, money, envy, as well as growth. And all of these themes are probably present in Walt's life during the ending scene of the pilot episode, where he's cooking meth and trying to sell it for a profit to support his family. And green is definitely a powerful color in Breaking Bad, and we'll be seeing Walt wear a lot of green throughout the first season of Breaking Bad, as well as all 5 seasons of Breaking Bad. Interestingly, as a side note, green is formed by blue and yellow, as we all know, and these colors are definitely associated with methamphetamine in Breaking Bad. Yellow being more associated with the lower end crank meth, and blue, of course, being associated with the iconic high quality blue meth we are so used to seeing in Breaking Bad. So in the next 3 episodes after the pilot in the first season of Breaking Bad, we'll be seeing a lot of green and yellow shirts being worn by Walt. In episodes 2 and 3, Walt wears a lot of yellow. And again, I think this is meant to symbolize the fear and trepidation Walter has in these 2 episodes, as well as the pseudo-toughness he has to display to overcome the obstacles he has in these episodes of disposing of Emilio's body and of killing Crazy Eight. And again, we see this yellow color theme at the end of episode 3 and the beginning of episode 4 when Walt reveals to his family that he has terminal lung cancer. We see Walt again at the beginning of episode 4 of Breaking Bad in season 1 after he tells his family that he has lung cancer. We see the theme of the sweater emerge again. At this point in the episode, he's powerless to do anything about his situation, and he seems to no longer want to manufacture meth to make money based on his previous terrible experience doing so. By the end of episode 4, it's pretty interesting to see how his wardrobe changes throughout the course of this episode. I think the writers decided to have Walt wear green in many scenes in this episode because of the fact that Walt is consumed by the fact that he really needs to make more money. Walt needs money really bad in the scene when Jesse comes over to ask if he wants to cook meth again, even after their previous terrible experience. And I think the scene, in his heart at this point in his life, Walt really would want to quit making meth and really doesn't want to do this again after his previous experience where he ended up killing 2 people. But he just can't because he needs the money. And the fact that he needs the money really supersedes his feelings in this situation. Walt is also wearing green in the scene where he tells Skyler is he supposed to leave her with that much debt after he finds out how much his cancer treatment will cost. And in the final scene in this episode where he blows up Ken's car, I think the green shirt he's wearing is definitely meant to symbolize a sort of growth that Walt is having as a character, and especially a growth and development of Walt's character at the end of this episode. But because we know Walter White before his cancer diagnosis would do no such thing as blow up a complete stranger's car. He would never do something like that. But I definitely think that the wearing green in this episode, compared to the bland gray clothing he was wearing in the pilot, is meant to show a large character development of Walter White throughout the first 4 episodes of season 1 of Breaking Bad. So at the very beginning of the next episode, episode 5 of season 1 of Breaking Bad, we see Walt wear a very interesting blue suit ensemble along with Skyler when he goes to Elliot's house. And we don't see Walt wear anything like this for the remainder of Breaking Bad as a television show. And in my opinion, this seemed to be like a subtle foreshadowing by the writers of the blue meth that was to come later at the end of season 1 of Breaking Bad. I think that's why they decided to dress Walt in this blue suit when everyone else was kind of wearing a beige color theme. So I always wondered why the writers decided to dress Walt like this, and I think that's a definite possible logical explanation to why he wore this suit. This episode also had the infamous talking pillow scene. And during the scene, again, we noticed that Walt is wearing a sweater. Again, at the lowest point in his life where he really has no control over the situation. His family is telling him that he needs to have chemotherapy to treat his lung cancer, even though he doesn't want to at this point in his life in Breaking Bad. And again, the sweater is meant to symbolize the lack of power he has in the situation. And when Walt decides to finally go through with the treatment, again, he's wearing a sweater at the doctor's office to have his chemotherapy administered. After the end of episode 5 of season 1 of Breaking Bad, where Walt asks Jesse if he wants to cook again, we see the sweater theme emerge once again. After Walt goes to have his chemotherapy treatment, after he goes back to school, he's wearing the sweater again as a teacher. And if we remember in this scene, Walt is starting to become very sick because of the chemotherapy. He has to leave class and vomit in this scene. In a later scene in this episode, after Walt vomits again, he's confronted by Hank about the lab equipment that was stolen from his classroom. And again, Walt is absolutely powerless in this scene. And in this scene, coincidentally, he's wearing a sweater again. And of course, as we know, Walt is guilty of sin for the crimes he committed of stealing the lab equipment. But of course, Hank doesn't suspect him at all. And again, at the very end of this episode, we see the sweater theme emerge once again. After Jesse meets with Tuco to try to sell him the pound of meth, and he gets ripped off and beat up, and Walt visits Jesse in the hospital, he's again powerless once again. There's nothing he can do to help Jesse at this point. So after the scene when Walt shaves his head and confronts Tuco, we really start to see the new character of Heisenberg emerge at the end of episode 6 of season 1 of Breaking Bad. The way Walt dresses completely changes from how we saw him at the very beginning of the pilot episode of this season. And it's really cool to see how the clothing change in Walt's life has really has a lot of symbolic meaning to the large changes that Walt has made in his personality. His Heisenberg character is completely different from his Walter White character. He's confident, he's self-aware, and he's definitely motivated, and he has a reason for living. He has a purpose in this life. I think it was a subtle yet intentional theme in season 1 of Breaking Bad by the writers to show the evolution of Walter White's character. And this theme really applies to all people in life. Changing one's hair or clothing style can really announce to the world that you are a new person. And Walt is absolutely a new person at the end of season 1 of Breaking Bad. He was a dull high school chemistry teacher who probably never broke a rule in his life to a murdering drug dealer. And he's really making the progression, as Vince Gilligan put it, from Mr. Chips to Scarface. Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. This is a real fun video to make. My name's Anton Jackson. I'm really looking forward to season 4 of Better Call Saul, and I'll see you guys around.